Hi, Sophie here. This episode contains a lot of very explicit images of Sonic the Hedgehog being torn apart. They were drawn ineptly by small children, but they're still kind of disgusting. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi Sophie.
Hi, Sim.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special Gaming in the Yeltsin Years.
So this is the thing, you have no idea why this is special.
It's a surprise.
Sin, you remember the 90s.
I was molded by the 90s.
And you remember video game magazines.
I mean, we didn't really have those in the Union.
Okay, so gaming magazines for people who were younger than us, they were like really, really important because they functionally for most people there was no internet, particularly if you're a child.
Mm-hmm.
So you got all of your gaming news and reviews and even like communicating with other people happened through magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So people kind of get nostalgic for / interested in those magazines. There's quite a lot of scans of them floating around online. And there's actually a dedicated Tumblr called Old Game Mags that just posts scans of old magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two things that people who sort of hang around that culture might be familiar with, and it might kind of trigger a weird memory when they hear about them.
Okay.
So the first is a drawing of Mario resurrecting Kurt Cobain so that he can write the music for the next Mario game. And the second is not a specific image, but a specific style of image in which Sonic the Hedgehog is being very, very violently killed.
On a magazine?
In a magazine, where they tended to be quite crudely drawn. And when I say violently killed, I don't mean like, you know, someone's holding a gun and there's a smoking pair of hedgehog shoes next to them. I mean like execution-style drive-bys. Lethal injections.
Was this for kids?
Yes.
Yeah, kids in the 90s were different. That's true.
When I saw those images, it awoke a memory in me because they're from a magazine that I used to read.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I want to take us through tonight. I want to take us through like what this magazine was and how those things ended up in it and who thought this was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of stuff around that magazine that's like even weirder, and I want to talk about that. So we're talking about things like dedicating entire pages to collaborative Yoshi role-playing.
Okay.
We're talking about selling merchandise that looks like the Share Zone stuff. We're talking about the magazine participating in the abuse of its own staff.
Okay.
A lot of this magazine is available on archive.org,
Mm-hmm.
but also a lot of it isn't. And in preparation for this, I thought, I'm going to have to actually track down these missing issues because I do remember them and I do remember things in them very vividly that I want to talk about, but I can't get the scans.
How did you get them?
eBay. I went on eBay.
Oh my god.
And I bought a big stack. Okay, so I'm dividing this into 6 parts. So we're going to cover like 6 things in this magazine. These are not in chronological order. They were all happening at once.
Okay.
It's just easy to talk about each one in isolation.
Okay.
So I want to start with part 1, which I'm just calling Fat Boy, Sonic, and Kurt Cobain's corpse. So when Nintendo Magazine System starts, like issue 1, which I do have in that pile,
Okay.
it's normal. You know, here's some walkthroughs of games. Here's like a list of where all the items are and linked to the past. Here's some previews. Here's some reviews. It's all pretty standard. But
Okay.
in that first issue, at the front of it, there's a little editorial and it's signed Fat Boy.
Welcome to the first issue of Nintendo Magazine System, Australia's first ever fully dedicated, 100% official Nintendo magazine. And what a great magazine it is if I do say so myself. N-heads everywhere will rejoice at our state-of-the-art graphics, in-depth and independent reviews, massive tip sheets, and goodie-filled competitions. Of course, as good as we already are, we intendo to get better and better and better and better ad nauseum. I could say more, but why bother? Turn the pages and you can see it for yourself. So what are you waiting for? From Fat Boy.
Okay.
Fat Boy is the name that the editor of this phase of the magazine used.
Okay.
There's obviously no letters to the editor in issue 1 because it's issue 1. They don't start arriving until issue 3.
Mm-hmm.
And what Fat Boy does in issue 3 is he puts his cards on the table right away and says, the letters are not angry enough.
I was bored to tears by an endless stream of letters with nothing more interesting than, "Oh, great, Meg, you guys." Now, don't get me wrong, even an ego as advanced as mine can still cope with blind adoration, but where's the acidic comments, the incisive criticisms, the insensitive jibes? Where's the bull? So toxicate those poison pens, get writing, get mad, get even, get me mad, and I'll get even.
I'm not even sure what to say to that. That's not expected.
The thing about Fat Boy is he's basically a pre-internet version of like an internet tough guy who wants to get in fights.
Oh my god, yeah.
Except that he is an adult man editing a magazine for children.
Well, like you said, Reddit didn't exist yet.
That's
He didn't
true.
have his outlet yet.
Yeah. So essentially what he starts doing is actively soliciting abuse from small children. And then it starts arriving. So this incredibly hostile tone is set almost immediately.
Dear Fat Boy, I'm virtually broke. I've got a Super NES with one game that I've completed, King Arthur's World, and I've been like this for over 6 months. What do I do?
Get a job, you lousy bum.
Dear Fat Boy, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I reckon you're a psychopathic freak with nothing better to do with your time than playing Nintendo and insulting people. Not saying I'm any different, so here's a question. Does it take 2 players to kill the Bigfoot in the last stage of Snake Rattle and Roll? If you don't print this, then you're a chicken.
I read your letter, and it doesn't make any sense at all. You're obviously suffering from and in need of help.
Dear Fat Boy, I've got a Mega Drive and I hate it. But the thing is, my parents love the thing and won't let me sell it to buy a Super NES. So is there a converter that makes it able to play Super NES games on the very said Mega Drive, or vice versa?
Parents are so old-fashioned, aren't they? Yours are obviously quite as well. Your question about a Super NES Mega Drive converter seems to indicate that you've inherited this unfortunate trait from them.
Dear Fat Boy, I have a friend with a Sega Mega Drive and all he does is boast about it. So could you have a poster showing Sonic the Loser getting his brains splattered all over a wall, or something educational like that? That should shut him up for a while.
As for killing hedgehogs, all I can say is hell yeah.
Oh my god.
Along with Fat Boy, there's like 2 other notable contributors to the magazine. And I'm going to talk about both of them separately when we get there. So the first of them is a guy called Skull, who is depicted in the magazine sometimes as like a cool 90s dude with like long messy hair. He kind of looks like he should be in Metallica, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then some of the time, which then becomes most of the time, which then becomes all of the time, he's an actual skeleton who is described as the Lord of Hell. The other writer, who is like kind of the tragic figure in all this, is a guy called Amos Wong.
Okay.
So Amos doesn't have like a persona. He's just a guy called Amos.
He's just an adult.
He's literally the single adult working at this magazine. For a, early to mid 90s Nintendo magazine. He's extremely articulate, he's quite intelligent, he's quite reasonable, he's very
Okay.
knowledgeable, his reviews are very measured, and it's just all about like actually what this guy thinks. He is not trying to have a persona where he's like hyper aggressive or a skeleton or anything like that. And then there's this rotating cast of other reviewers who make no impression whatsoever and basically just wrote like 3 sentences and moved on.
Okay.
So we basically have Fat Boy and Skull setting this massively aggressive tone, and Amos sort of in the background, like holding this thing together to try making it reasonable. So then what happens is, in issue 7, they decide to launch a contest that they call Bigger is Better. So the prize for Bigger is Better, and the reason it's called Bigger is Better, is this Game Boy add-on that is essentially the Game Boy equivalent of Voltaeus. It's like this massive exoskeleton that you attach to a Game Boy that gives it like a joystick and a magnifying thing and a backlight and stuff like that it didn't normally have. So what they want you to do to win one of these is they want you to send in reader art of the mighty Mario stomping what they only describe as a certain blue spiky mammal.
Okay.
So this is the mid-90s. The Sega versus Nintendo console war is at a pretty all-time high.
Okay.
They now actively solicit art of Mario stomping Sonic. And when it arrives, oh god, is he stomping Sonic. He is stomping Sonic so hard that Sonic's skull has cracked like a fucking egg.
Oof.
His head is a red smear on the ground, while Mario and his friends are happily watching. And at this point, the floodgates are just open. And they get so much Sonic gore sent to them from this point onward. This is the origin of all of that. They always hated Sega. There is a lot of, like, console wars bullshit in that magazine. Like, the Sonic images that they're receiving at this time are, like, they are borderline Guru. Like, it's like Sonic is... There's images of Sonic being hanged. There is an image of Dr. Mario giving Sonic a lethal injection.
Oh my god.
There are images of Toad from Mario running down Sonic in an alleyway screaming kill. So they have set this tone that is just like everything about Sega like needs to just actually die. Like it is so extreme. And this is going to come back and bite them in a very big way in about a year.
What a twist.
What a twist. So, for people curious about the origin of the resurrected Kurt Cobain...
Yeah?
Yeah. So that is from another contest they did.
Of course.
They wanted you to say who you think should do the music for the next Mario game. So for people who haven't seen this image before... It's not just like Kurt Cobain has come back to life to make music for Mario. It is literally Mario at Kurt Cobain's actual grave with a partially decomposed Kurt Cobain hand reaching out of the grave with like exposed bones and skin hanging from it. While Mario goes...
If a Kurt Cobain could do the music for the next Mario game, then it would be real Mario music.
Oh my god. Well, you want to be respectful, right?
The other thing I want to point out before we move on to part 2 is that the layout of this magazine is a fucking nightmare to read.
Okay.
There are pages of this magazine that, like, even if you physically have it in front of you, you cannot read. Like, it is obsessed with gradients and repeating patterns on the background of every single page. To the point where, like, you're looking at this and you're thinking, is this a magic eye image? There is literally an entire mailbag where the background is just a repeated image of a hot dog. And at the start they say, this issue's theme is hot dogs. Thank you.
Simple and straight to the point.
It is like... my eyes hurt remembering it. So now I want to talk about the second thing associated with Nintendo Magazine System that I don't think really gets much attention compared to Zombie Kurt Cobain and the Sonic Guru, which is a section that the magazine itself referred to as Dinosaur Hotline. So in issue 21, someone wrote a letter to Nintendo Magazine System in character as their Yoshi OC. So they'd invented their own Yoshi,
Okay.
whose name was Joshi.
Now, a bit about myself. I'm Yoshi's blue cousin, the one who Mario raised from babyhood by making me eat Cheep Cheeps and Koopas. There's been a shortage of turtle shells since the Koopas were driven away, so I don't fly much anymore. I'm looking forward to starring in the new games Nintendo are making for their 32 and 64-bit consoles, if that show-stealer Yoshi doesn't grab the leading part. Thanks for introducing me to pavlova sandwiches, fat boy. They're my favourite food besides berries, and you should see how fast I can scoff one with the patented tongue grab manoeuvre.
Aww.
The next Yoshi letter isn't until issue 23.
Okay.
And it's not just someone writing in as Yoshi, it's someone writing in as Yoshi responding to Joshi.
Aww.
When Yoshi was a baby, he couldn't see that well, so he thought he was being raised by Mario. But it was Luigi, because Mario was raising me on shells and sometimes an occasional berry. I've starred in 3 games on the Super NES, and Yoshi has only starred in 1. At Christmas, and for my hatch day, I'm going to get the 32-bit Nintendo and the Ultra 64. Well, till next time, glorp!
To me, this is sort of evidence that this was not the staff fucking with you. Because there is like an issue downtime, which suggests there was enough time there for someone to read it, write a response, and get the response printed.
Okay.
The problem is that this starts to take off among the readers. So, by issue 26, about a third of the letters section is just people role-playing conversations as the different coloured Yoshis.
That's pretty cute, though.
Well, by issue 28, it's slightly under half the letters page
Okay.
is the Yoshis talking to each other.
Yoshis are taking over.
Dear Yoshi and Joshi, why have Joshi and I only been in 1 game? Yoshi's been hanging out in all the games letters to the really sad
Yoshi,
person.
I just
who
go
was
to
impersonating
Earth to get my
copy of
excellent cousin
Nintendo
Yoshi
Magazine
in
System.
NMS
Why don't you
23.
go? I suppose you're scared. You obviously have no understanding of the way Yoshi is in Dinosaur Land when Bowser took over. You just read the instruction booklet of Super Mario World, but since you obviously don't have enough brain cells, Yoshi has escaped. Toshi, the blue cousin of Yoshi.
Wow.
I'm paid off to find Boshi didn't include me and Boshi in the meeting on the Big Star. I've a really good idea to blow up Yoshi. Not a message for you, fat boy. You can get stuffed.
But then, because there always has to be someone who is a little darker and a little edgier,
Okay.
they get a letter from Zoshi,
Ooh.
the evil Yoshi who's a punk.
Don't pretend you don't remember me, you stupid freaks. It's me, Zoshi, your long-lost evil brother. Zoshi has returned from the planet Orc, and I will get you all. Lots of love, Zoshi the Malevolent.
By issue 30, over half the letters page is Yoshi. Now, Fat Boy, throughout this, is saying, I'm sick of printing these, I don't want to print them anymore.
Aww.
Yet he's printing them.
Yes,
he
he
had
is.
the power, at any point, to stop printing the Yoshis. In the same way he had the power to not print Sonic being disemboweled. So I feel like he needs to own his decisions here. He needs to own his editorial line, which was to encourage people to roleplay as Yoshi. And this just continues. You just have, probably a solid year's worth of just correspondence between people playing different versions of Yoshi interacting with each other. It's like looking at, an early internet forum where people are role-playing, except it's the letters page of a magazine. So there's this huge downtime between each one.
Mm-hmm.
And despite what Fatboy says, this never stops. He never ever stops this. It only actually ends around issue 35. Because at issue 35, which was like the beginning of 1997, there is a big staff turnover and Fatboy leaves. And I can only assume that each one of those Yoshis was actually a different person.
Yeah.
Because of the downtime between the letters. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the lighter sides of Nintendo Magazine System.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to talk about Skull. Skull was the guy that ran the Q&A page. He also did some reviews, but he mostly ran the Q&A page. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Skull started off depicted as like a cool dude. He had like long hair. He looked sort of like disaffected. He had his hands in his pockets. He's like, yeah, what the fuck ever. But then sometimes he was also a skeleton.
Okay.
And gradually the skeleton evolved to become that Skull was the Lord of Hell. And he lived in hell, but he also answered the Q&A page in a Nintendo magazine for children. So, given that Skull had sort of established, well, I live in hell.
Right.
The very extreme violent art that was sort of already in the magazine just got worse when he was involved. So you just have, like, disembowelment, impaling, hanging, dismemberment. It's everywhere on this page, which is just a guy answering questions about, like, when Chrono Trigger is coming out. Chrono, by the way, also got dragooned into murdering Sonic at one point. And the thing about Skull is, like, because they were depicting him as a skeleton, but they didn't really have, like, an in-house artist per se, they start making collages of Skull. By getting, like, stock images of skulls and sticking, like, sunglasses or wigs or helmets on them and things like that. And the thing is, it looks exactly like the Share Zone.
Okay.
It's surreal. Mm-hmm. And because Skull is just a skull, they realize they can just sell, like, Skull toys through the magazine and say that it's Skull. So the magazine begins selling merchandise that is not actually merchandise of itself. It's just like they just bought a bunch of skulls and sold them as, like, the official Skull merch.
So, like the one behind you.
Yeah, like that. But Sin, it gets a lot deeper than that.
Okay.
Because some of those collage images of Skull, they started putting them on, like, shirts and posters and things, and you could order them through the magazine. Mm-hmm. And one issue, they actually put a Skull poster in it.
You have that?
Yes. I would like to point out, this is a 30-year-old poster of Skull.
Yeah.
But you can see it has that aesthetic. It is just all these random rainbow gradients everywhere with just what's clearly like a stock image of a skull, and those glasses, they clearly don't belong on it. And it's just there, and written under it is, chill out, I'll do it tomorrow.
This is older than my sister.
So now that, like, we've been through, you know, some fun and some, like, you know, wacky stuff with Skull, I think it's time to address some of the really awful shit that happened at the magazine.
Oh, no.
So this next section is just called Mr. Prasad.
Okay.
I will not be reading extracts from the Mr. Prasad section because it's all incredibly racist.
Oh.
But I just feel like it's worth noting that this happened. So what this basically is it's like the evil version of the Yoshi roleplay.
Oh, no.
Where it seems to just be one person.
Okay.
Who is role-playing as a man called Mr. Prasad.
Okay.
Who is essentially Apu from The Simpsons, dialed up to, like, 11. It is very, very uncomfortable to read. He works in the Quickie Mart. Instead of playing a Super Famicom, he plays the Super Fami Indiacom. And there's just all these really, really, really long letters that just read like a racist joke someone would tell at a party and no one laughs. I don't want to dwell on it because it's fucking horrible. I just would also like to point out that Mr. Prasad was also involved in murdering Sonic.
Oh my god.
But this is sort of what I mean about, like, it's not like this is an internet forum where people are posting things and there's no moderator. Like, there's so many steps to go through that go from, like, someone is sending you, like, Mr. Prasad to you printing Mr. Prasad.
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of steps there.
Yeah.
That at no point did Fatboy intervene and say, maybe we shouldn't print this. So we're following this up with another bad thing. As we established, Nintendo Magazine System had a real hate on for Sega. Like, it just despised everything about Sega. Amos Wong,
Oh no.
as well as being, like, pretty much the only decent contributor the magazine had, he was also the contributor to a video game-focused TV show called The Zone, right? So The Zone was a show that was on Saturday morning, and it was, again, as much as Nintendo Magazine System embodies 90s magazine design, this embodied 90s kind of TV directing. Like, it was like weird angles that had randomly cut black and white. It had all these, like, horrible CGI sequences of, like, laughing skeletons and, like, people made of chrome surfing around pretending they're in cyberspace and stuff like that. You can find quite a bit of it on YouTube if you just look up The Zone Australian TV show. And I think we need to cover it one day because it is so bizarre. So it was a multi-platform show. Like, it would cover, like, Nintendo, it would also cover Sega, it would also cover arcade, it would also cover PC. Amos Wong was one of the reviewers on that show, and he reviewed a Sega game. And he said it was good.
Dear Fat Boy, I'm disgusted. There's a traitor on your team. He goes by the name Amos Wong. I saw a program called The Zone as I was flicking through the channels, and there he was commenting about how good bloody Sega games are. From Distressed Individual, Applecross WA.
Is this Poshi?
For all we know, it was. So then Amos responded, and I think this gives a rough idea of, like, Amos being a reasonably intelligent, measured, rational human being. And he says, as well as Super NES reviews, my role in The Zone includes occasional arcade reviews, and Sega's War Wing happened to be the one that week. Whether I liked it or not isn't the issue. If you're letting your prejudices get in the way of experiencing potentially great games at any arcade, it's you as a gamer who's missing out on the fun that's being offered. Fun, not who makes it, is the bottom line.
What? I did not expect that.
Well, yeah, this is what I mean about Amos being, like, the sole adult in the room during this whole saga. So how do you think Amos's response went down?
Oh no! Oh no! They literally killed him!
Yeah, he is then subjected to the same fate as Sonic.
Oh no!
Readers start submitting artwork of Amos Wong being killed.
Oh my god!
Graphically, because one time he said a Sega game was good in an unrelated publication.
Wow, gamers are truly being gamers regardless of the decade in which they're found.
But these people were fucking, like, 8 years old at the time as well, right? How do you think Fat Boy and the rest of the Nintendo Magazine System crew responded to this? Do you think they stood by him?
I'd like to say yes, but I feel like they didn't.
They published a dartboard of him.
Oh my god!
In the magazine, you could get a full-page dartboard of Amos Wong.
Oh my god!
Because of, like, probably like a 30-second long clip where he's like, yeah, War Wing's pretty good.
That is intense.
And yeah, when Nintendo Magazine System kind of restructured in 97, Amos leaves. And, like, as far as I can tell, he didn't really do anything after that.
Okay.
like, he doesn't seem to have had much of, like, a career as a games journalist. So I don't know what happened to Amos Wong, but he deserved better.
Amos Wong, if you hear this, you deserved better. We stand with Amos Wong.
Also, Amos Wong, the only one brave enough to use his real name.
Oh my god, yeah.
Compared to Fat Boy and Skull.
Fat Boy and Skull. Maybe, Sophie, maybe those are their real names.
It's possible.
Okay.
So, around about the start of 1997, it kind of ticks over. Like, the staff are pretty much gone after that. They're replaced with new staff. The magazine itself changes pretty drastically. This is also when I stopped reading it. Because
Sophie's like, I don't support these changes.
Because 1997, like, that was when I was 13. So I'm like, I'm not a child anymore. I don't play Nintendo. I play PlayStation. The serious adult games like Final Fantasy VII.
Yes.
Yeah. So I sort of dropped off reading after that. That kind of brings us to the end of, like, all this stuff happened. And as far as I can tell, like, it's never really been properly discussed in detail. It's just people just sort of know, like, the Sonic gore and the zombie Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
They don't really know what led to it, or what it was, or why it ended up going away. So, I hope this enlightened you about this fascinating piece of Australian gaming history. Sin, did you learn anything today?
I sure did. I sure did, Sophie.
Yeah, this is how, like, characters in Bloodborne feel. You've learned too much, and now there's, like, a slug growing in your brain.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sin.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. And for
thank
those
you, Amos Wong.
Yeah. For those who listened till the end, let us know what you learned in the comments below.
Also, if you are Australian and you, like, do you remember this?
Do you remember this?
Because I remember it. The other thing I should point out, because we've got, like, a couple more minutes, right? You'll notice Australian millennials often say Sega instead of Sega.
Yeah.
And that is because all the Sega marketing that we got in the 90s called it Sega.
Yeah.
Like, it was officially called Sega in the commercials. Which is bizarre because the game started with a sample of someone going, Sega! It took me until my mid-30s to unlearn Sega and say Sega. Happy New Year from the Sinclair Law Crew.